It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my CEO guest is Paul Macaluso. Paul's a 25-year restaurant industry veteran, currently serving as the president and CEO of Krystal, one of the largest and oldest burger chains in the Southeast. Paul's background includes experience in operations, franchising, marketing, and brand strategy with some of the most prominent brands in the food service industry, including Taco Bell, Burger King, Sonic Drive-In, and Moe's Southwest Grill. Before joining Krystal in April of 2018, Paul was president of McAlister Southwest Deli. He holds a BS in communications and an MBA from Florida State University. Paul Macaluso, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you, Brant. It's my privilege to be here. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you today. And, I think you're down Southwest way. I'm trying to remember exactly what part of the country you're in.
Southeast. We're in Atlanta. Headquartered in Atlanta.
How's the weather in Atlanta today?
It is a beautiful day today.
Spring has sprung, I think. I was
Definitely.
down there actually a couple of weeks ago. We had a conference of one of my peer advisory groups, and what a wonderful town that is. Well, we want to start a little bit about your background. I don't think you grew up in Atlanta, so let's start maybe, telling us a little bit about your early years, where you grew up, and, what was your early family life like?
Great. Absolutely. Yeah. So I grew up in the Southeast, but not Atlanta.
Okay.
I was born in New Jersey, actually, but moved to Florida when I was less than 2. So I consider Florida home, Orlando predominantly. Moved around the state quite a bit.
Yeah.
My father was a general manager of Albertsons grocery stores.
Right, sure.
In my early years.
Yeah.
And so he was promoted and we moved from city to city, but pretty much from middle school through high school was back in Orlando. And a lot of my family still lives in Orlando today.
Mom a stay-at-home, or did she have a career as well?
No, grew up with my stepmom and my dad, and both of them worked. So it was kind of middle-class family. A lot of, if we were lucky, we got to take one vacation a year. But we had a great family life. I have an older brother and a stepsister.
Awesome.
And so I had a great family life there, and a lot of great memories from my childhood.
Great. What were some of the inspiring things that stepmom and mom and dad provided for you? I'm a stepfather as well, and I prefer to be called father. But bottom line, I'm sure you probably grew up with that as well. Well, tell me a little bit about some of the things that you remember as a kid that mom and dad told you about.
I'll tell you, I just had a tremendous influence from my father. It really was a role model that it still affects me today. He passed away a few years ago, but
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he was a tremendous person. Had a tremendous work ethic. He had my brother and I as a single dad from the time I was 2.
Yeah.
Got married to my stepmom when I was around 9. So raised us by himself, which was pretty unusual for back in the 70s, late 60s, 70s.
Right. And worked full time as well.
Worked full time. I had support from his parents, so my grandparents, and it was. I really learned a lot from him. He's just a hardworking guy. Never graduated high school. He went into the Army and got his GED, and then just made a nice career for himself afterwards through a lot of hard work. But he had the ability, both with my brother and I, to really instill in us a desire to, achieve and do great in school. And I always, wanted to make him proud. That was kind of what drove me all the way through, even through college, and into my career, for sure. So it was a great example. I remember going to work with him early mornings. Back when I was in middle school, he changed careers and was an entrepreneur. He's bought a route with Tasty Cakes, so he would deliver Tasty Cakes to grocery stores, and he was a franchisee of that system. And so I got a chance to work with him in summers,
Nice.
which involved getting up at like 3 a.m, unloading trucks,
Wow.
going to grocery stores, delivering product, and so I got a real sense of what it was like to get up early and work every day, and it made me want to make sure I got my high school degree and college degree. It was enough of a learning that that I wanted to pursue that. So, just had a big influence on my life in a lot of ways.
And he was a career guy with Albertson. Sounds like he was with him.
Yeah, he did. And then like I said, he became that franchisee of Tasty Cakes. He worked, then he ended his career with a company called Griffin Industries, which is also in the restaurant industry in there. Oh. And he had a great last 15 years of his career there, and just a great company. So he did very well for himself for someone who kind of muscles his way through it.
So it sounds like you were exposed to food and food service and food prep pretty early on.
Yes, absolutely, and franchising too, which is a big part of my career today.
Awesome. Awesome. What about some other early influencers or early inspirations? Were there any coaches or teachers that you remember from, again, the grade school days?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of great, teachers are always, such a great inspiration for so many people. I certainly had my share through middle school and high school. My older brother was a great inspiration to me as well. I'll be honest with you. He's just 2 years older than me, but just very successful in his career. He's in the creative side of things. So he's a creative director for an agency today. And, he was, again, super hardworking. He really drove me as well, helped me a lot along the way. And I wanted to, kind of follow in his footsteps and be as successful like him. So,
any specific lessons from your big bro, and things that you kind of go back? Gosh, I remember when he told me this.
Yeah, so growing up, he was way more extroverted than I was. I was very introverted through high school and college, through middle school and high school, and so he would always encourage me to just really put myself out there and to try to have fun. I was very much driven to do great in school, and I actually had a part-time job. So I was very focused on just, getting things done. And he would always encourage me to just enjoy the experience, enjoy high school, enjoy college, make some time to have fun, make some time to, spend time with friends and enjoy the college experience was one of the things that I really appreciated him. I went and visited him while he was in college when I was still in high school. And I was like, okay, this looks like it's actually going to be fun to do rather than just like something I got to do. I've got to go to college. I've got to get a degree. It really helped me to appreciate, that there was a balance there that I needed to have.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to grow up in the shadow of a successful older sibling.
Absolutely.
Some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. He was very successple and still is. And so, in fact, I had a chance to speak at a reception for him. He won an award, the Addy Award, which is for advertising award.
Yeah, sure.
And I got a chance. He asked me to speak on one of 3 people to speak on his behalf a couple years ago. Nice. And so I had a chance, and that was really the theme of my speech was how difficult it was because he's been so talented and such a great student of things, a great person, a great father, and so. But that it actually, helped me as I look back and reflect on my career. It helped me to achieve and to really have more drive. So it was a great situation. Not always fun, especially early on.
Doesn't sound like he had the rivalry though.
He didn't do that to me. It was more self-inflicted, for me, like wanting to be motivated, and so it's a great motivator and a great support system.
Awesome. Were you a good student in school, Paul?
Starting in middle school, I think early in my elementary years was not such a great student. I think again, as I mentioned, my father married my stepmom around that time. And after that time, I had a lot more stability and a lot more support from that kind of maternal side. And and that really helped me with my studies. So, through middle school and high school was very focused on good grades and very focused on, academics and that something I took a lot of pride in.
And you mentioned a stepsister, so I'm assuming your stepmother brought that to the marriage.
That's right. Yeah. Stepsister. She's also 2 years older than me, so I was the youngest.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's great. Still have a great relationship with her. Nice. She's still in Central Florida, and it was I got a lot of people looking out for me with my older brother and older sisters.
That's
all the way. Yeah.
What about outside of class? What other kinds of interests? Sports, drama, theater, any other things that you got involved with? Music?
I wish I did things a little differently with regard to this. Honestly, I really wanted to start making a living and earning money. So I started working right away. In fact, my first job, I got fired from because I lied on my application. I said I was 15 when I was actually only 14.
Oh my God!
And I thought, I could start working. It's the summer. I have a September.
15 was the minimum age.
15 was the minimum, and I have a September birthday, so I wanted to work over the summer. But I went to work for Little Caesars. I was there for about 3 or 4 weeks, and they finally said, "Look, you got to bring your driver's license in."
Like I don't have a driver's license.
Yeah. So I really was wanted to make money. I wanted to just kind of start earning, and between being really focused on school and then working after school, that's really where I put my time. And I reflect back on that and think, again, as I now have kids that are getting to that age where they're going to start, being able to work.
Right.
I certainly appreciate the skills I learned by working, but I think there's a balance, that I will definitely strive to seek with them where they should enjoy more of their high school time and pursue their passions in sports and
have the
music.
Ability to do it. I'm sure there was a lot of motivation for you to get out there and have some extra pocket change.
There was. Absolutely. It was a different time.
Any entrepreneurial things, younger paper routes, selling Christmas cards?
So, the typical lawn care was a big thing. So I did growing up in Florida.
Important.
Oh, yeah. I mean, nobody wants
summer months.
Yeah. So I did a lot of yard work around the neighborhood for cash early on. And really cool thing that I reflected back on as I was preparing for this is when my dad was on his Tasty Cake route, as I mentioned, he would drive through kind of central Florida through the route, and he would go through Ocala. Ocala, Florida has a lot of watermelons during watermelon season, and they're like beautiful, huge, and they're just farmers selling them. So he would buy 20 or 30 watermelons for 50 cents each, bring them back, and my brother and I would sell them in front of our yard for like $2.
The watermelon stand.
It was just the watermelon stand. Yeah, it was great.
And you sell it by the slice or the whole
just the whole watermelon. And we'd sell it for such a deal. Oh, it was such a deal versus the grocery store. So people would go quickly, but we make a nice little profit. And so, that kind of showed me early on, that kind of helped me understand a little bit about business early on. Those were maybe 12 or 13 years old when I was doing that.
I love it. Was college an obvious choice for you, or was it kind of because Big Bro went and you kind of followed in his footsteps?
Yeah, it was an obvious choice. It was an expectation.
Dad wanted to make sure
it was exactly. So it was something that I knew I was going to do early on, was a goal of mine. My brother, was the first one in our family to ever go. And I was able to go a few years later, and it was definitely an expectation and something that I, it didn't work out the way I thought in terms of what I first went for, but it was a great experience and certainly helped me, to achieve this success I'm having in my career.
How did you go about picking the college you went to?
Yeah, so my first thought was my first goal was to be a pilot. I thought I wanted to be a pilot. Yeah. So I actually was in the Civil Air Patrol also at that time. And I thought, I started taking private pilot lessons with the money I could, get. I found a great teacher that was very, reasonable to teach kids in the Civil Air Patrol to fly. So I took about 10 hours or so, and I applied to the Air Force Academy.
Oh, gosh.
And so that was my goal. It was pretty much the only school I wanted to go to. And, it's a very rigorous process to get into the Air Force Academy. It's a very prestigious process. And so
is that Annapolis? No, that's Navy, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's Air Force Academy is in Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs. That's right.
Yeah. So long process to get through. You have to get, obviously you have to get past the first stage, which is just your basic grades and SAT. You have to pass a physical fitness exam, which I did. You have to get a congressional nomination, which is extremely difficult. Only I think each congressperson gets 2 nominations. So I got that. I had to go through an interview process, got a congressional nomination. And then the last stage before you get kind of this screening, this kind of private screening, is a medical test. So I was like, okay, I'll do the medical test, whatever, big deal. So that's when I found out that my eyes were not 20/20. I had no idea. Yes. Yeah, my eyes were 20/30.
Right.
I didn't even know.
That's a no-go.
That was it. I was out. I was done. And so that was in my junior year, the end of my junior year when I found that out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was challenging. So kind of reassessed what I wanted to do.
Sure.
Thought I would go into political science. Applied to different schools to get in there. Ended up going to Florida State because
you were still living in Florida. At the
still
time.
In Florida,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
so state capital. Thought I'd get some chances to work at internships at the state capital or whatever. So that was kind of my thought, and end up changing my major after I took several courses on foreign policy and didn't think that was something I really had in me. So I ended up changing communication and. Got my bachelor's in communication at Florida State, and then stayed straight through and got my MBA.
Yeah.
So just wanted to, when I graduated with my undergrad in '91, it was a bit of a recession, if you remember. And, and so I was like, you know what? Let me just stay through. I'm in the mode of studying. I'm in the mode of not having money, so I'll just stay through that one more year.
Yeah.
And they had a joint baccalaureate program where you could get your MBA in 1 year if you were even as a non-business undergrad, if you kind of took accelerated classes over the summer and so forth. So I did that and graduated in '92 with my MBA, and then that kind of started my career.
Great. So, you went straight through. What was that first job that you took outside of college?
Yeah. So my first role was at PepsiCo, which was recruited out of my MBA. So they came to the MBA, students at the end of the semester, and I learned about this program where PepsiCo at the time owned restaurants. They, this is before Yum was spun off.
Yep.
So they had KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut.
Right.
They also owned obviously Pepsi and the bottling, and they owned Frito-Lay. So the pitch to me as a graduate, student, MBA student, was you get to this great PepsiCo management experience. You'll work a few years in the restaurant division, you'll work a few years in the bottling division, you'll work a few years in the snacking division. And,
really? They moved you all around the various
divisions? That was the plan. That was the plan. And it sounded amazing, right? So I started off in the restaurant division, and I never left. I started off with a concept that they own called Hot Now, which is they no longer own Hot Now, but it's a double drive-through hamburger chain similar to Checkers or Rally's.
Okay.
And then I was there for a little over a year. They moved me to Taco Bell, and then they spun off the restaurants. So I stayed in the restaurants. It was in my blood. I absolutely fell in love with it. I never expected that's what I would do coming out of my MBA. I started off as in entry-level operations positions. I was a grand opening manager for new stores, moved me around from city to city in the Southeast to open new restaurants, and then I was a general manager over two different Taco Bells.
Wow.
So I was in, and really fell in love with it. It just
sounds like you had some early leadership responsibilities too. Tell us a little bit about that.
That was really the first time I managed people. Was I was a general manager.
You're like early 20s, right? 22,
early 23.
Yeah.
I was running two different Taco Bells in Central Florida.
Nice.
One was an extremely high volume restaurant, one of their top volume restaurants in the nation. One was a lower volume restaurant. So I got a lot of experience with, what it's like. And a general manager of a restaurant is such a great job because you have multifaceted responsibilities. Not only you're dealing with customers and customer service, you're dealing with maintenance issues and facilities issues and running a P&L and all the people stuff, right? Training people, developing them. It was a super rewarding job, and I fell in love with the industry from those roles. Now, as a CEO of a restaurant company, I reflect back on those. It really influences how I make decisions, how we develop materials, how we roll out new products, is because I remember what it's like, to be there. And
we want to talk about Krystal in a minute, but I want to capture a little bit more from the early years. Tell me about some of the early leadership lessons you had, particularly from maybe bosses, bosses good and bad from the past, right? Sometimes some of the lessons from those bad bosses tend to be the things that stick with you most.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to mention any names, Paul. It's okay.
I won't. I have plenty of both examples on good and bad, but I definitely agree with that. I had some amazing bosses that really helped me and taught me about making sure I'd spent time to develop myself and to set goals and achieve them and develop mentors and, just basically on how I showed up every day and how I presented myself to find my voice. So I had just tremendous people that helped me along the way. Most of that at Taco Bell early on. I was there for 10 years. And so I had a great exposure too, because of the influence from PepsiCo. They really believed in moving people around and cross-training them.
Right.
So I ended up spending time in franchising, in HR, in marketing, as well as operations. So I got a really great base for my career. But later in my career, I had, some bosses that were not so great.
What were some of those lessons?
Yeah,
so some of the behaviors.
I think the biggest thing I learned from those is people that don't really believe in building people up, people that don't believe in building teams, that are very controlling, that don't support.
It's all about them.
They don't support. When there's a tough patch, they're immediately throwing people under the bus and looking to blame and instead of learning from mistakes and helping people grow. So I had a couple bosses later in my career that I learned a lot from, probably more honestly than from the good bosses, just in terms of how I shape my decisions and how I want to lead.
Yeah. Sometimes those learnings can be quite traumatic.
Right. Yeah.
But they do tend to stick with you over time, right? And you go, I will never do that.
Exactly.
And catch yourself. So the first time you started managing people, sounds like it was there. What were some of those lessons from that point in time? I imagine you probably had folks that were, 15, 16-year-old part-timers, but you probably had some folks that might have been older than you as well. Was that a bit of a challenge?
I did. And, just setting expectations, making sure that people knew what the guidelines were for how they were going to work there. There's always people that want to challenge the rules, and so you have to make sure you're setting expectations and coaching people and giving them kind of clear swim lanes to be successful. I had a lot of people that worked 2 jobs, so
wow.
And so just kind of appreciating what they were going through and showing them respect and being flexible, with our schedule so that they could meet their needs went a long way with people. But I certainly made a lot of mistakes in those early years in terms of mostly by not being clear with people on my expectations, and I see something and let it slide because maybe I didn't want to confront it or didn't want to deal with it, and that just never is a good idea because it's just going to accelerate. So I learned a lot, and I had to learn some tough lessons there. And
being clear about accountability is really key.
It's key. It's key for everybody.
We've had a terrific career. We talked about Pepsi. I know you went on to Burger King and Sonic and Moe's and most recently, I guess, at McAlister's before coming to Krystal. And I want to talk about a little bit about Krystal before we jump into that. Tell us a little bit about, kind of how your leadership style has evolved over time. You talked about one of those lessons, obviously, with regards to being clear and holding folks accountable. What are some of the other things as you look back now in your career and say, boy, I wish my 25-year-old self, if he knew what I knew now, what would be some of those things?
A couple things that I learned later in my career was the value of goal setting and developing, a set of mentors and relying on other people. I was very much focused early in my career of just doing everything myself and kind of, figuring out how I could do it and not asking for help. And so that's a huge lesson that influences me now. It was really accelerated my career in the last 10 or so years as I learned that skill. And also is important to me as I talk to, more junior people in my company today, on making sure that they know that and use that and develop that skill. So, really the beauty of this industry is that there's a lot of people that want to help each other. There's a lot of people that, that can help. And so you just got to find that right, linkage, and, and then be clear with your goals and then kind of have that plan.
Yeah. Anything else that you can say, again, looking back and, how's your leadership style evolved?
I think another one is definitely communication. It's funny because it was my undergrad degree, but I don't necessarily think I was great at it.
That was a good degree to get for the business you're in, the thousands of people
it really turned out that way. I didn't really know it then. And even in the middle part of my career, I didn't value it as much as I needed to and do today. It is such a critical part, especially as a CEO, of just bringing people along and constantly communicating and constantly making sure the vision that we're on and the mission that we're on all of our values that we're continuing to remind people.
Right.
We can be working it hard and be having a lot of success, but if we're not communicating it, if there's a void in communication, typically, unfortunately, it's filled by negativity or filled by doubt or filled by assumptions that are wrong. So I spend a ton of my time communicating to people, constantly communicating, constantly sharing, constantly getting out. And one of my goals in the first year at Krystal was to visit every restaurant and to visit every general manager. Again, as a GM myself, former GM myself, I knew that was important. And so I got to maybe about 150 restaurants, and it was closing in on a year. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to get to everybody. So we ended up doing a series of road shows. We did 6 road shows in January and February of this year. So that we could be all the GMs together in smaller groups so that I could do just that, right? Just communicate the vision, communicate the brand purpose, all of our objectives for the year. What an amazing experience that was. So it's a critical part of success for sure.
Nice. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about Krystal. Now, I think I told you, we not only have a national, we have got a global audience on this podcast. In fact, last night at 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. her time, I interviewed a CEO in Singapore.
Oh, wow.
Who manages a business for Unilever called T2T. They're a tea retailer going great guns and expanding globally. And so not a lot of folks know about Krystal. I know you're regional, but expanding. Yep. So tell us a little bit about the company, kind of what the core, values are, the mission, and the business, and maybe a little perspective on the size of the operation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an amazing company with a rich legacy in history. It was founded in 1932, so it makes it's Krystal's the second oldest QSR in the country.
No kidding. Wow.
The oldest in the Southeast, and but it's interesting. It's never really expanded outside the Southeast.
Right,
so we have 350 restaurants today, mostly we're in 11 states, 11 Southeast states, but mostly in 4 states. Founded in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So Tennessee is a big state for us. Yeah. Georgia is a big state. Florida and Alabama are core states, but we've got surrounding states, 11 states in total.
Corporate and franchise? Is it
corporate and franchise? Mostly corporate, which is pretty unusual today. We have about 65% corporate stores. We're a burger. We sell the Krystal is a burger. It's a slider. It's a smaller burger.
Smaller burger.
Yeah. And makes up 70% of our sales outside of breakfast. But we have a great breakfast. We've got chicken products. We've got hot dogs, fries, so forth. So at a great menu that spans all day parts. It's a company that was founded during the Great Depression, so there's a rich heritage and legacy there. I mean, there's amazing stories I could tell you about the founders and what this comes from, but it was really founded on some basic premises of serving people, called the Krystal Creed, and it really talks about giving people great prices. Obviously, that was super important back in the Great Depression, right? Great food. But treating people with respect, and it's this brand purpose of uplifting people is really what it's all about, and that's still a part of what our brand purpose today. Our brand purpose is to uplift each other, so that's employees, that's customers, that's communities, that's for general managers, it's investing in themselves. So it's a great history and legacy that I have the privilege of being a part of, and a responsibility to continue to grow.
Now, it sounds like it was started by some founders. Is it still family owned? Are you private equity backed?
We're private equity backed now. The founders had the brand from 1932 into the late 90s.
Okay.
It was sold to private equity one time, and then the private equity firm Argonne Capital, who owns us today, bought us about 7 years ago.
Right. Got it. And you've been there how long?
Just a year. I started last April, so a year and a month. And
this is your first CEO spot. I know you were president at McAlister's, but
that's correct. This is my first opportunity to be CEO. So it's really a dream come true, a goal that I had set for myself when I was a general manager at Taco Bell. So it's really really been an amazing journey, and very, very privileged to have this chance.
And about how many employees in total across the franchise?
Well, we have with so many company restaurants, we have quite a few. We have almost 7,000 employees.
Wow. Yeah. Great. Well, a lot of them are going to hear this podcast, so they'll get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Hey, out to you, all you Krystal employees. Well, let's talk a little bit about building a company culture, because wow, what a legacy. You're coming up on, 90 years, I guess. Going to be 100 soon. You've got some responsibility there. What are your thoughts on building on and or creating a company culture at Krystal?
Yeah, honestly, it's, as a CEO, it's the number one priority for me. There's all kinds of other things that are important. Obviously, growing the brand expand and continue to grow the number of stores and bring in franchisees, a lot of financial goals. But by and large, the biggest thing that I can do is build a great culture here, because I think that's the foundation. And as I was in other roles leading up to this, that was the one thing that I wish I could have a bigger impact on. I tried to influence the culture at other jobs I was at, but now obviously there's no excuses. I'm in charge. So
that's right.
So I focus daily on what are we doing for the culture? How are we getting it to the place where we want it to be? What are the issues and challenges? How can we remove roadblocks and obstacles to get it where we want to be? And one of the first things I walked into was a situation where we had 3 years of negative sales. The culture here, although the foundation of it was tremendous because of the history I told you about, when you start losing momentum and you start having, losses and not having success, it's hard. Right. It's hard on morale. It's hard on people. So we had to get some early wins, which we did. In the first quarter of this year was our first positive comp period in over 3 years. So so we got the business turned around. We still have a long way to go, but that was first and foremost one of the main things is get the business turned around, get some early wins going, get people motivated, get people excited about being here. We had a lot of attrition at the store level and the restaurant support center level. So we've made big improvements in retention, investing in people. We have all kinds of great programs now we put into place. But my goal is for this company to be a place where people are super proud of working for, where they see a career path for them to develop and achieve their goals. We just launched a new scholarship program last year for people. Just a lot of my activity is focused on the culture and recognizing people, rewarding people, and building a great place to work.
What would you say is most unique or unusual about Krystal's culture, Paul?
I think it is pretty unique to have such an amazing legacy. It's funny, when I was at other brands, I'd be like, oh yeah, we've been around for 40 years and we have this great history. And then I came here and I was like, oh, wow, 87 years is it. And so awesome. I think a lot
of responsibility.
It really is, and when I think about how much longer I plan on working and what that could mean, there's a chance that I could be here, if I do my job right, I could be here for the 100-year anniversary, right? So that is kind of an amazing thought, that I could be with a brand that is successful, and is continuing to grow. But the how these two gentlemen founded this company during the Great Depression, I've really researched that a lot and really share that a lot with my general managers as I've been on these road shows. It's actually, we have a convention coming up in October. And the theme of our convention is uplift, which is our brand purpose, and it is all about just kind of what we did. We had a mini version of this in the last 3 years. We were negative in sales, we were decreasing, we were closing stores, and we had to get that turned around. And now we're on a path to growth and a path to success and a path to continuing to grow people and let them grow their careers. So awesome. It's a tremendous privilege.
Well, we talked a couple of weeks ago when we planned the podcast, and you talked about being blessed with a pretty stable executive suite, which is great, and probably more people being added due to growth than anything else. So, talk to us a little bit about what do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in?
There's obviously the basics that you're going to look at, you're going to see on a resume, right? You're going to see, do they have the skills? Have they had experience in this industry or in their field that you can count on? But for me, I spent a lot of time talking about our company values, and I ask them how those resonate with them, right? So we'll go through our values. We have 5 core values of our brand. I'll read through those with people. I'll ask them for their thoughts on them, and I'll really get a sense if they align with those, personally and professionally align. I'll ask for examples of things that they've done to display those values, because as an executive, we have to be the example in living the values. We have to be aligned in how we're going to overcome obstacles, what our style is going to be when we do face trouble. If I only have, a limited amount of time with somebody, that's typically my question or two with them is, tell me about how you deal with a difficult people. Tell me about an experience you had with dealing with a difficult person, because that is so much about how they will respond, because we have.
What do you look for? What do you look for in an answer to that kind of question?
I look for people that will reflect on things that they could have done better themselves, right? So how that maybe they are a part of the problem and how they have grown and what they've learned about themselves. I look for people that aren't afraid to give clear direction and hold people accountable. So, those are the things I look for. But I always want to make sure people are treating each other with respect, because there's really that when that is missing, then everything kind of falls apart from there. And then you have a host of other issues. But I also ask people about setbacks that they've had in their career, what they learned from the setback, why it happened, and what they did differently, again, to see if they have a level of being able to reflect on things that they could have done better.
And humility.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's huge. I just work better with those types of people.
Nice.
Those people that aren't that way can certainly be successful. They are successful, but it's just not someone that I enjoy working with or I want part of my team or my organization.
Yeah, cool. And, how do you decide when it's time to micromanage someone, or perhaps stay out of the sandbox?
Yeah, it's really, situational. It depends on, the level of how critical the problem is or the issue.
Sure.
And if I feel like the person has, the skills needed, or if they don't have the correct attitude at that point. So I'll dig in. That's a great thing of kind of working my way up from the bottom and working across so many different disciplines. I'm not afraid to jump into anything. I've got experience in pretty much every part of this business now. So I can add value and I can dig into the details when I need to, but I really like to just help my people be successful by making sure they have the resources they need, making sure I understand where their gaps are, asking questions about maybe where they need help. But I'll try that approach first. But certainly, we've been in a little bit of a turnaround, situation the last year. So I've had to dig in. I've had to dig into media plans. I've had to dig into creative. I've had to dig into labor scheduling. Yeah. We've been in full turnaround mode. So, but I have an amazing executive team, very experienced, very tenured. And, the first thing I did with them when I got here was we didn't work on the strategic plan right away. We didn't work on, making sure I got trained in restaurants and everything, which I did eventually. But the first thing we did is we sat down and we developed our guiding principles, how we wanted to work together as an executive team. We called it our Designed Alliance. And we have these principles. We hold each other accountable to them. We recognize each other when we uphold them. And we have a very clear way of working together and expectations of each other.
Well, Paul, you've been very generous with your time, but we always kind of end with one question that is helpful to the middle market audience. A lot of the folks that will be listening to this are, maybe you 10, 15 years ago, right? Folks that are kind of looking for career tips to, get ahead or maybe make it to the corner office of their own. What would that advice be in terms of someone that maybe has their sights set on leading an organization or a department and, really wants to be able to succeed? What would you tell them to do over the next 10 or 15 years on their road to the corner office?
Absolutely. I think there's, several things. I mentioned earlier, finding a mentor, finding someone you really trust that isn't in your day-to-day life. So, they have a much more objective view of what you're going through, someone that you can connect with that's really looking to help you, that you can talk to from time to time and give you some advice and give you some thoughts and some thought starters.
Right.
Being very clear with what your goals are and being clear, not only about like, okay, I want to get better in this discipline. So I'm going to read this book or go to this, conference or take this webinar, but who are the people that can help you? What are the relationships you can invest in to achieve those goals? That's something I think a lot of people miss, and building relationships is such a critical part of your more executive level position. So you have to invest in those relationships and find those people. And the other thing I would say is, when you see change coming, when you see change within an organization or change happening in the industry, run towards it. Don't be afraid of it, because the people that are successful are the people that see change as an opportunity to take more responsibility, an opportunity to grow and to learn. The faster you can embrace change, the faster you can overcome it, the more that other executives within your organization are going to see that in you. They're going to give you more responsibility. They're going to reward you for it. And that's been a big part of my last several years of success, has been being quick to acknowledge change and just not getting worried about it or bummed out that, life's going to change or things are going to be different, but actually being excited by it because I can maximize it.
That reminds me of the story of the buffalo. I don't know if you've heard this before, but most livestock run away from a storm, but buffalo run toward it because they know they're going to get to the other side quicker.
Yeah, smart. Did not know that, but yeah, makes sense.
Well, that certainly supports your hypothesis. Well, Paul, thank you so much, CEO of Krystal. We appreciate you sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you, Brand. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.